All right, folks, we're going to kick off tonight's Evenings with Artifacts. We are delighted to have you join us tonight for a discussion about the Loose Ends Project with co-founder Jen Simonic. For those of you who don't know Jen, she is a former teacher and tech worker, as well as an avid crafter. As mentioned before, she is the co-founder of Loose Ends Project and currently resides in Seattle with her family and her yarn stash that she needs to make a plan for. Although she is temporarily not in Seattle because she just won a huge award. So maybe Jen, as a way to start your intro, a little show and tell. Welcome.
Has anyone ever been gifted a giant pair of scissors? Because I have, and they're actually functional and very heavy, and they have my name and my co-founder's name on them as well. We just got the Golden Scissors Award at the from the Craft Industry Alliance for innovation in craft, and our innovation is the process that we found to match people with projects that have been left behind by their loved ones to finishers all over the world. So
No, Jen, we do like you, so please don't take those on the airplane because we don't want
I'm sure
TSA
TSA
to
won't
love
have a
you.
problem. I mean, I guess they could be seen as a bludgeon or a stabbing vehicle. So
I'm
yeah.
telling you, it's Jen in the kitchen with the scissors and the clue game. So
Exactly,
watch out.
exactly. I told Macy I'm going to take him for 6 months and then I'm going to send him back to her and she gets him for 6 months. So
Now we know what you're
that's
going to get with.
actually really, really exciting to get, and not. It's a big deal to get an award after being in business for 18 months. So it's kind of a big deal for us. So thank you.
Astonishing. Congratulations. And it made that big trip worthwhile.
Oh yeah, been a fun trip. We're currently at H&H Americas, which is a trade show for crafting, which has been super fun. So as a crafter, my eyes are like gonna pop out of my head, and just the people and the reception we've gotten from the show has been amazing.
You come with an empty suitcase to stuff full of more crafting, and your husband's like, please don't.
Yeah, well, it's funny because it's a trade sale for retailers. I can't really buy anything because I don't own a yarn store, but people have been giving us stuff, which I mean, I got scissors.
That's awesome swag.
Anyway.
Heather will kick us off. Right? Yes.
Yeah, so I think just to start, Jen, for those that don't know anything about loose ends, could you tell us a bit about the spark that created what today is Loose Ends? What was it? When was it? How did you come up with this amazing idea and a nonprofit?
Well, thank you. So what we do is we complete projects that have been left behind by people. This is not a new idea. And we remind people tell us this all the time that, oh, I've done this, I've done that before. That's something I've done. What's new about it is doing it for people they don't know, and and how we match people to people for the project. So that's the interesting part. And the way we came up with the idea is my friend Macy and I went to school with her husband and my husband, and we went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and they were architects, which means they have no other friends but architects. So we go once a year, we all meet up, and Macy and I are the spouses that come along, and we both knit. So we knit a lot, and that's like the fun thing we get to do when we're together. And we met up at our friend Patty's house, who's also an architect from CMU, and Patty's mom had just passed away. And when you meet up with somebody who has a crafter in their life and they've just passed away, you get the bag of stuff. And it's usually like, oh, my mom just died and this is all of her stuff. And, you get this bag. Um, and you can't say nobody really wants this bag. You don't want this bag. As a crafter, I don't want this bag, but I love my friends, so I will go through it and I'll figure out where we can put the stuff. Okay, there's some cotton yarn that somebody can make dishcloths out of. That goes to the senior center. Oh, this is really nice yarn. If you want this, I'll make a scarf out of it for you and you can have that. Oh, this is stuff that will go to a children's art class. So as we were going through Patty's bag of stuff and sorting out the needles and stuff, we came across two blankets that her mom had been making for her brothers. and her brothers are very tall, big men. And I've slept at Patty's house on the couch and slept under one of the blankets her mom made, and it was this giant, voluminous crocheted blanket. And I'm holding this blanket, going, "Oh, I guess I'm gonna crochet a blanket." And I can crochet. I can crochet probably better than most, but I don't like to crochet. I'm a knitter. And as I'm sitting there holding this blanket that I know is going to take me hours to do, Macy's like, "Remember that idea we had? We should try it on these." And Patty was game and was like, "Yeah, you can take them. I'd love for them to be done. Let's see if we can find anyone to do it." So we went home. Macy's a graphic designer by trade, so she made a website, she made flyers, she put a media kit together, and we started being bad on the internet a little bit, where we would join on Facebook groups and talk, like tag people and say, "Hey, we're doing this. You want to do it?" Got kicked out of a lot of things, and by the end of a month, we had 150 finishers and 5 projects to try, and
Wow.
that we were kind of off to the races. We were walking around with flyers. There's flyers in Seattle with my home address on them, I'm pretty sure. I don't recommend that if you're starting a business. Don't do that. But we got some press because it's a nice story and it makes people happy. Um, and it kind of went from there. And we've been in business for about 18 months. And now we've got 25,000 finishers in 64 countries. And we've got active projects in 13 of them, mostly projects with that's people places where they speak English, because that's, you know, what we speak. But we do have flyers translated in all different languages. And yeah, it's been crazy. And we finished almost 2,000 projects. We're not really sure, because usually what happens is when that bag comes to us and somebody says, "I have this project." I'm sure my mom was an expert knitter and she was making a sweater. When our finisher gets that project, sometimes it's like, "Oh no, this person was a crocheter and they were making a blanket and a hat." And there's usually a multitude of things. So you're like, it's a mystery. It's a little puzzle. All of it's a little puzzle.
This is funny, Jen. When you talked about sitting together and knitting, I had this flashback. I hadn't thought about this in years. When I was in university at the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, one of my best friends, she was in my wedding later on, she crocheted. And she was a resident assistant, and so was I. And she was up on duty, overnight in the dorms. And she started crocheting like in the lobby. And then someone asked, "Can you teach me?" And then someone else, and all of a sudden you had all these 20 somethings sitting in the dorm crocheting, like little old ladies, people would tease them. But then for my wedding, she made me a crochet blanket. So you gave me this beautiful flashback
Oh,
to university days and
that's so
crocheting. So
lovely. It's really funny. People assume that I mean, we've got so many volunteers, right? And people assume it's like 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds sitting in a nursing home ready to go. Our, first of all, our finishers are all over the place in terms of who they are. We don't take any bio data on them. We don't take any statistics, but we have like an empty field that says, "Tell us about yourself." And some people give us all the information. And some people do, like we had one person that's like, "Steelers fan." And I was like, "Okay, that's great." I'm guessing that you might, your name is Mary, you might be identify as female, but like that's all we got for that lady. But others, like we have 19-year-olds, we have all ages. I had one woman who was having a lot of trouble signing in, and finally she kept sending me email after email after email, and I figured out she's like 93. And I was like, "Okay, well, we're going to do this a different way. It's all good. We're going to figure it out." So yeah, knitting and crocheting are not something that's only for old people. It's everybody. And even if it was only for old people, there's some badass old people out there. So I mean, I always feel a little bad when they say that. It's like, my grandma was awesome. I don't know why, it's not your grandma's knitting. Well, too bad, because they did some awesome stuff.
Believe me, you're among the least ageist people you can find here at Artifacts. We have the most amazing arty community. I'm curious, talk about how you match. You talked about the unique process of matching people to projects. So what does that look like now when you have 25,000
Well,
volunteers?
it looks a lot different than it started. It
Yeah.
started in Google Forms and spreadsheets. And I don't know if you've ever had a spreadsheet with 25,000 rows. It doesn't work very well. Um, I luckily live next door to somebody who's in tech and has done a lot of web design and web apps. And we met, we have Christmas together, our families. And apparently he went to bed after Christmas and said to his wife, I'm not making anything for Jen. Now, Jen didn't ask him to make anything at all. I was like, oh, all right, fine. And then 2 days later, he was like, come on over. We're going to talk about making you a web app. So thank God for Mark, because by the time we got all of our finishers into a web app that we could search, um, we had 17,000 and our spreadsheet was just breaking down. So what we have now is awesome. We have a mapping function that I can, so if I'm in Montclair, New Jersey, and I'm on Christopher Street, I can take that address, I can put it onto our app, I can choose a craft, and I can find out how many crafters with that skill are around in by a 2 mile radius up to a 300 mile radius. And we've color coded them, so if they've self-identified as beginner, intermediate, or expert, we can know. And because some of our, I mean, we have people who are like, I can't be a finisher because I'm not an expert knitter. It's like, some of the projects we get aren't from experts. They were just people who enjoyed their craft and they made a lot of single crochet blankets. So if you know how to do that, you can finish this project. You can finish some of our projects. So that has been a game changer for us in terms of scaling. Um, the next part that we're working on, and we're working on getting donations and getting more sponsorships so that we can build out the app so that it can take the projects in and start cutting out a little bit of the scut work. Because right now, when a project comes in, I read it, I cut and paste it, and then I go into my app and match it after I ask some questions. I never actually get the projects in my hands, which is good because I live with other people who would be sad if our whole house was taken over by projects. But yeah, so we get them and then we offer an email to our finishers and say, hey, is this something you'd like to do? And they can always say no. So
Jen, this may be a great way to transition into the next question because we've been Ellen and I have been watching your social media feeds and love the projects, not just the depth but also the breadth of what they're doing and just how beautiful they are. Would you be willing to share with our audience tonight a couple of some of your favorite projects, maybe one or two that have really stuck with you? Maybe one inside the US, maybe one outside the US, anything that comes to mind?
oh, there's so many of them and they're so varied and different. We currently have a project in the UK that is 3 looms. There was an expert rug maker. She loomed rugs, and she came her relative came to us and said, I've got these 3 standing looms, and they're big. They take up you know a good amount of floor space. Apparently she had a YouTube channel and was doing these rugs for her channel, and we found a finisher who actually was one of her fans on YouTube,
Oh, wow.
who took the projects, but she had to rent a truck. She rented a truck, brought 2 of the looms to a museum that she had access to. So this museum's storing them and she has one at them at home at a time that she's finishing. I mean, that's pretty spectacular. Um,
That's dedication and it's spectacular, and it's gotta
yeah,
be
and it's
beautiful
huge,
too.
right? And then like some of the sillier, we've gotten some silly ones that are just darling. Like we had a woman give us.
Darling but PG, right? So let's
Oh
think.
yeah, yeah. This is PG.
I was like, where's she going with this?
No, no. Box. We got a box of styrofoam balls and some some knit what appeared to be like tiny scarves and tiny hats and googly eyes. Grandma was making snowmen for every single person in her family, And I
Aw.
was like, I don't know if we're gonna find anybody to do this. And yeah, I don't know why I bothered to worry about it. We sent it to a crafter. She's like, this is definitely up my alley. I have a glue gun. I got it. And we got the most adorable picture back of everyone in the family holding their snowman, which was like, so like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and usefulness, and like what's special to somebody. Like I imagine in your work you come across somebody with a snowman from like 3 generations, like what on earth is that and why do I have it? Well, you have it because grandma made one for everybody,
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of that's the beauty of finishing these projects, is that they held a special meaning to the person who was making it, and hopefully they can convey that to the person who gets it. um,
This
but
is why our companies resonate together so well. I
yeah,
mean, the entire reason we tell people we took the A out of artifacts because a true artifact, something that belongs in a museum or is valuable or historically relevant, those are great. And we have lots of those artifacts, our artifacts. But the important thing is it means something to you. And
right.
that's no one can judge. We don't have emojis. No one's judging your artifacts, right? Like they're gone, right? You do
Yep.
you. But um,
Oh,
there is a
we had
question.
a blanket that was somebody, the comment was, everybody has an ugly blanket from grandma except for Bob. And Bob's isn't finished. Can you finish it? And I was like, did grandma know her blankets are ugly? Why did we call what? And apparently grandma knew. She didn't care. She just made blankets and they were what they were.
And
And
everyone
we
accepts it,
finished
like in Harry
Bob's.
Potter, right? You
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Ah. And Mary Pat would like to says she crochets, not loose, tight stitches. And do you match up projects started already? But how do you coordinate the gauge? You know, are you a tight versus a loose?
Gauge is a thing, and what we can do is, we show pictures of the project, we show what's going on. I don't actually get to touch or feel them, so there's a lot of times where we don't know. If you get a project and your gauge is tighter or looser, we encourage you to change hook size and try and figure out that way. As a knitter, I would have knit a swatch with the leftover yarn to see if I could match the gauge given the needles that were there. If I couldn't, I'd change my needles up or down. So there's ways to work around that. And we also have like a get out of jail free card. If you're doing a project that you can't stand and it's just too hard, or it's not working, that's okay. You tried. Send it back. We'll find another finisher. We have 25,000. We'll be fine. But, with those kinds of things, we also have a finisher group on Facebook that is a private group, and boy, those people are so talented and smart that if we ever have problems with gauge or something like that, you put that question up there, within 10 minutes you'll have one answer, within a day you'll have the answer. So it's pretty remarkable.
And that leads really nicely, I think, Jen, to the next question we've got for tonight is what has led to the groundswell you've experienced in terms of the number and skills of your volunteers? I mean, you have so many finishers, and it's not just across the US, it's across the world. And then the second part of that are what are the implications of that for how you match projects to volunteers, which I think is what Mary Pat was getting at too with her
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of things that have led to our success. We've got a terrific board and great advisors that help us talk about different things. B, people are just tired of bad news. And this is just such a good feel. It makes people feel good. There's also an awful lot of crafters out there that imagine themselves as people who have projects left behind and objects left behind, and what are they going to do with them, and how are they going to maintain, what would happen if they left, and if they and the good news is we're here, so we have a place for you if you pass away, which unfortunately we all are. I hate to tell you that,
It's
but
just part of life.
it's just part of life. But I think the groundswell of the finishers, I think the pandemic has a lot to do with it. I think there were a lot of us trapped without any community, and being able to be part of a community, even if you don't get called, is kind of outstanding. I've had people tell me about the project in real life, like, you're a knitter, have you heard about this thing? I'm like, I have, in fact, but that's great. Thank you. Are you signed up? People also ask, do you have enough finishers? And even across the globe, like, we don't have enough finishers. We're never going to have enough finishers because our projects are so local and so highly specific that, we might have 20 crocheters in Portland, Oregon in this one area, but um, maybe we need a crocheter and they're not there. Or maybe we need a nail bender, which is a craft that they do. I know it sounds like a made up word. It's not. It's a Nordic craft that we actually have people volunteer for. We haven't had any projects yet, but they volunteer. We learn a lot. But I
I
think,
want to know about all those too. That's pretty fascinating.
yeah, but I think that's where it's coming from. I think we've been apart for so long. We've got all these people who have skills to share. They don't know how to share them. It's also a lot of introverts are so they love the idea of taking the project, finishing it, and giving it back and not having to deal with people. For what, I don't understand that myself, but um and what was the second part of the question, Heather? I'm sorry.
No, that's great. The second part was what are the implications of that for how you match projects to volunteers? And I think you've touched on that a bit, but if there's anything else you want to add about how do you do that matching project?
So the way we do matching, I told you the the procedure, but there's three criteria. How close are you to the finisher? Because we would like to cut down on global impact and greenhouse gases and things like that. It'd be great if you were really close by. So I would prefer to match somebody who's really nearby because A, it's good for the environment, but B, it's good for community. And part of the thing that we do is we create community where people might not see it. There's people around you who want to help. Um, and then, okay, you're nearby, but can you do the craft? Is it up to your skill level? Is it something you can actually do? And we do depend on self-reporting, but turns out people don't want to do things that are too hard or too easy. So they'll tell us if they're not going to do it. And the last thing is, do you want to do it? I can crochet. I didn't want to crochet my friend's blanket, even though I love my friend. I would have, but I created a nonprofit, so I didn't have to. So, you can go do you. But we definitely want people to love it. We don't want it to be torture. Like, and we always tell people, like, if you're doing this and it's feeling like torture, just tell us. We'll change it. But like, people don't like to knit with black yarn because their eyesight's not that great. So we won't match them with black yarn. People might have allergies to cat hair. We won't match them with a project that had cat hair. Like, we try to make it as pleasurable an experience as possible so that people want to do it again.
This is fascinating, Jen. One of the things that I think would be really fun to share, especially where you are at the conference and meeting with folks from the industry. We've had people here remark how crazy and amazing is that this is a nonprofit. How do you make that work? Like, talk to us about like the textile industries and the partnerships that you have to rely on and develop to
Yeah.
make this work.
Well, it's funny because I'm like in the thick of it right now. We have a wonderful partnership with Joanne Fabrics, who is they do this wonderful program called Roundup at the Counter. And what happens is somebody goes to buy something and they can round up to the nearest dollar amount for a charity. And that has given us a great operating budget to start with. But you shouldn't be relying on one organization for all of your income. So we are talking with lots of partners around here, and there's lots. I mean, the response we've gotten is everybody's raising their hand. We want to help you. So, um, it, what we're seeing is that the craft industry sees this as something important that needs to keep going. So we're gonna keep partnering with people and and
Your
this,
community appeal is huge, and it's
yeah,
something we hear, and we talk about the arty community here, right? It's something we hear, and we're even talking about, you talked about the private Facebook groups, and it's something that we're talking about because we have people write in and they would like to have pals to artifact with. And I
yeah.
think that it speaks to what you're saying. And I love how you said there are people nearby, they want to help you. And I
Hmm.
think that it's really easy to feel isolated, even if I'm in an urban area here in Austin, Texas. I think it can feel easy to feel isolated and not feel comfortable even to reach out and know how.
It definitely, I think, there are people out there that don't talk to everybody they see. I'm not one of them, but there are people out there. There are people that, yeah, I mean, and I get it. My partner in crime here doesn't talk to everybody that comes by. Um, but for those people who aren't extroverts, they're still looking for connection, and there's still a community of people around that want to help. What I find so amazing is that a lot of times you just have to ask them. And and we've given people an opportunity to say, these are the skills I have. Ask me. And when we do, they're just so happy that they've been asked, and they've been given an opportunity to volunteer. One of the amazing things that happens with ours is we don't care what religion you are, we don't care what gender you are, we don't care. We just don't. We care that you have one, or you care about that for yourself, but that doesn't take any bearing into how we match people. And we've matched people who would not normally talk to people that they've been matched to. But in every case, they have, our finishers have come and they use words like, this is an honor. I'm so thrilled to be given the opportunity to do this. It, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter where someone comes from, or what side of the political aisle they are on, or how old they are, or how young they are. Eh, People are just happy to help other people. Getting an opportunity to help people is just as big as getting the help yourself.
And I think we've seen that, like, especially after COVID, like that feeling of we are in this together, we can help each other, we can be good humans. There's so many, I think you said earlier, that this is a good news story, right?
Yeah.
There's so many horrible things you see every single day when you turn the news on right now. And to know about this and to be able to like actually help your neighbor or help someone across town, it's very powerful, and I think also very empowering. And the fact that you're doing a good deed, it's just it's there's something there. I want to jump to a question that Judy just popped into chat. When you were talking about finishers, she'd like to know, when a project gets finished, what happens to the items, assuming there are many different outcomes?
So the outcome that we aspire to is a project gets finished and it gets returned to the family that wanted it finished. We do have, and the project needs to come from someone who passed away, and it's important to that family to finish the final project of that person, or you are infirmed in some way, and have lost the ability to see, so you want your needlepoint finished. Or we do have projects like that, like, I was in the middle of this, I really want to finish it. um, so that would go back to you as the finished, as the original crafter, to go to the family member that it was. We do have people who are like, can you finish these things and then donate them? We don't do that, because part of the whole thing is the finisher gets that lovely feeling of helping somebody. It's not just doing someone's busy work.
Yeah.
Um, we definitely get questions like, I just can't do this anymore. Could you do it? No. If we did that, then I'd have all my projects finished, because I have many. So no, no, that's, you find a seamstress to do that and they'll take care of you. You can pay someone to do that. We just do things for family members who, even family members who can knit or crochet or do that craft. Sometimes it's too hard to work on something that their family member had worked on. It's just too
I
much.
Jen, I think I was going to echo that, because I have a loved one who passed away, and her daughter finished many, many quilts that were left partial. And I think that the emotional and physical drain of doing that labor of love, I mean, it can turn you off of it. It's kind of like when people tell you, oh, I went to get my PhD. The lesson I learned is get your PhD in the thing you love second most, because if you do it in the thing you love first most, you won't love it anymore. It's kind of like,
True.
I don't want to look at another quilt ever again. I baked bagels. I never want to eat another bagel, right? Like, I think that there's something about that. It can be therapeutic to a point, but the burden that a loved one can feel, the obligation to honor, can be really tough to manage.
It can be. We actually, in our work, we talk to a lot of press, and we talk to a lot of people, and we talked to this one woman who writes about uh, knitters in the Holocaust who were Jewish, and how the different ways they they survived doing knitting. They rebelled by doing knitting and like different things. And she had a chance to touch these objects that were made in concentration camps by people. And she was telling us about it and started crying. And she said that it was weird. It was like you can feel the energy from it. And I'm not very woo woo, but these do, like, the feeling and the intent is there, and you can kind of gets carried with you. So it's, I can understand when somebody doesn't want to pick up their mom's thing and it's just too hard.
Mhm. We've got one more question following up on that last one, again from Judy. What if the family or person can't finish a project but doesn't want it back? Maybe they only want one sweater finished, but there were many, or anything similar.
So we will do the one that you want back.
Mhm.
On our website, we have a donations page, and on that donations page, you can donate to our cause. And there's also a list of places that will take donations of materials, donations of unfinished projects, and we try and make them available as people come in and say, I need more materials. We put them on the list. But we have lots of places to do that. It doesn't, it's not fair to our finishers because they do put so much work and energy into it, and to have someone say, no, get rid of it for us, that's not fair, and that's
Yeah.
not why we do what we do.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Jen. And I just put for everyone, I just popped the website back into chat. So if you missed it the first time we popped it in, it's there right now. So please definitely check out the site and all the resources they have on the site. And Ellen's popping in the chat that yes, we featured Loose Ends Project in our Going Green guide for Earth Day this year as a
Thank you.
great way to ensure that these loved textile projects don't end up in a landfill or don't end up in a storage unit somewhere forgotten about. It's a beautiful thing you're doing, Jen. I want to go back to one of the questions we have. Um, our audience tonight includes people from all over the country and a few folks in Europe and South Asia too, and of course, a diversity of ages. Ellen and I joke, although it is no joke, our artifacts community consists of people aged 16 to 97. What would be your call to action or message to the folks listening tonight?
Oh, well, if you are a crafter and you want to be a finisher, join us. However, if you are a crafter and so my partner Macy has a lovely little book that she writes. She calls herself a catastrophist. So I get these phone calls before she gets on the plane. Hey, I'm taking this blanket for Phil on the plane with me. It'll be gone when the plane goes down. But there's some beautiful cashmere for a sweater for Owen, and there's some yak fur that is slated for Satchel. Get those done. Maybe make some mittens for Elliot. I get this list, and she's got it written down, and it's a text message. If I go down in a plane, there's going to be stuff in my house. Now, what's going to happen is my family's going to find the crocheted bikini top I was making when I was 20, and they're going to be like, Mom would have wanted this done. No, Mom doesn't want it done. No. So this is a call to me to throw that out, or find some 20-year-old who wants to wear this badly knit bikini top. But
That is all the rage right now, I'm just gonna say.
yeah, and I'm not going to do it. So get rid of it. If you don't want it, get rid of it now. Don't make it a problem for your children. It's not worth it. If it's something that you find value in, leave a note. Put a little note. I'm in the middle of making a sweater. This is going to be a sweater for Jake. This is going to be a scarf for my mom. I'm using this yarn. If something happens, call Loose Ends. They'll take care of it. But it's a good way to start thinking about your objects. I mean, Artifact is a great way to do that. There's so many things around my house which has been described as steampunk chic, because we've got like tools from my grandfather and an analytic scale, and these are all really meaningful for me. But if you walk into my home and you see this stuff, you're just going to be like, Jen collects junk of the scientific nature, like, and there's no real story. But like, by using Artifact, I'll be able to say, this was my grandfather's, and it's important to me because it reminds me of these things, and this is why it's in our house, children. So don't throw it out, or find a really good place for it.
I wasn't actually crazy. There was a rhyme to my reason.
Yeah, there's a reason I have this, not just because I collect old tools. It's because it was important to me and important to somebody in my life.
No. And if our members want to get involved, Jen, what's the best way for them to get involved as a finisher or as, I mean, any other ways for them to get involved?
So we've got lots of ways to get involved. Our website is looseends.org or looseensproject.org. I think we switched it over, so looseends.org. Go there. You can sign up to be a finisher. You could submit a project. You could donate. We're always looking for donations. You could go to our flyer page and print out a flyer and put it up in a place like a public library or a community center, anywhere you think people would like it. If you're We've been putting things up in yarn stores and quilting stores and giving them to churches. Spreading the word is great. If you know another language and you want to help us by increasing our flyer reach, volunteer to make a flyer in a different language. Or if you have another exciting way to help us, email me at info@looseends.org, looseensproject.org. And I'd love to hear what your idea is. So there's lots of ways to help, and we'd love to have your help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm typing those up for folks, put them in the chat. So in
Thank
case you didn't get all that at once, I'm going to pop them in the chat in just a sec. If you've got any questions, I don't think Ellen's got another question.
Yep, I got one that came to me. So Jen, what is an unfinished project in your own home? And what's your plan for finishing it?
Great question. I currently have a pair of socks for a coworker. I've got a blanket for a child who's going to college. I have a teenager that lives with me that keeps asking me for an Irish knit sweater that I have the material for. I have a dog sweater for a very small dog. And my plan to finish them is don't start any new projects until I finish the old ones. That's my new thing. I did meet a person who was in a knitting guild, and she's like, every Friday I just work on old projects. And I was like, that's great, except if I'm starting a new project, I've got 6 more every week than I have on the old projects. So that doesn't seem like a good idea. So so for the month of May, I'm working on works in progress. And if I get through May and I finish 2 of them, I'm going to allow myself a new one.
Yeah, I think her formula needs to flip, right? On Friday, I get to do something new because otherwise
I mean, she says it worked. I don't know. She must be more disciplined than I am. I don't know.
It's like the people that have 3 books they're reading at the same time. I can't do it. I read one book, I finish, and I read fast, so I still consume a lot of books, but I can't.
I'm one of those people. I've got the book next to the bed. I got the book in my ears, and I usually have at least 3 going, but that's
Well, I took a crochet class, no, embroidery class, excuse me, and with a circle, and
hoop,
it
like a
was,
hoop.
a hoop,
Okay.
and and it's this cute little plant.
Those are very different things. You know that, right? Like one's a little tiny needle and one's like a hook, right? I'm sorry, Ellen. I got to give you a little bit of a hard
Now
time
I know.
here.
I'll once we're gonna be hanging out a lot, so I'll get here. But they had wine and we had these, and I got pretty far. But the problem is I put it down and now I can't pick it back up until I reteach myself all those stitches. And so I'm super annoyed with myself because I was like, now I have to relearn all those stitches for those knots. And so it is, I have one unfinished because I don't craft, and that thing haunts me. It's in my closet laughing at me.
So YouTube is a wonderful thing. And
Yes.
there's lots and lots of people who are making their way through the world by documenting everything that they do. So you can always find YouTube tutorials, and you can go to your local craft store and see if they've got a class.
I think that's a great reminder for us all. And Jen,
You don't do that much, Ellen. I don't think you have plenty of time. Go take a class. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm going to out Ellen. I did give her a little.
She did.
So this year. And I know for a fact it's now not going to get done.
because I do one thing at a time, and I still have the one from 4 years ago. Yes, so I had surgery recently. I was laid up. Heather sent me 3 pounds of gummy bears, 4 books, a movie projector, and some embroidery. And actually, the embroidery is really cool. I
Oh,
really want to do
cool.
it. But in fact, this is something I was thinking about when you talk about people who by disability can't finish something. When you can't see straight, when your medicine, when your vision, when your dexterity are affected and you literally can't, that's also, I think, something I want our audience to understand is Loose Ends is here for you too, right?
Oh,
People with
definitely.
dementia who have lost their administrative faculties in order to take those steps to complete those processes without someone helping them. I think that that's really, really important for people to understand as well.
We did a piece for NPR, and they highlighted a project just like that of a woman named Donna, is suffering from dementia, and it's getting worse, and she could see it in her rug making skills. And you could kind of see where the motifs were off, and she was kind of losing the connection. And one of our finishers talked to Donna about the project, was able to go through her clothes and find some silver thread from one of her scarves, and took that, outlined Donna's work with the silver thread, and then finished the whole project as well. And Donna got to get it back and enjoy it, and know that at that point she still could remember that she had been working on it, and it was something that gave her joy. We also had a woman give away all of her knitting supplies because she didn't think she would, because she went blind and couldn't use it anymore. I'm sorry, I just looked over and saw these giant scissors again, and it was a little frightening. But the woman who went blind, her friend took the kit she was making and gave it to us. We found a finisher who finished the project and got it back to the friend. The friend gave her the project, gave the original crafter the project for her birthday. And it always makes me want to cry. She was like, "Look, I was really good at this. Like, this is something I was good at, and now I got to finish it." So she gets to wear that thing that she was really good at, and remember the joy that she got out of making it. And it didn't just become one more thing she had to throw away or get rid of. So that was kind of a meaningful project right there. So if we can help somebody have that moment, that's a great thing.
No, I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jen. I want to give the audience one more chance. If there are any other questions for Jen, we'd love for you to pop them in the chat. And we'll see what we get. And if not, Jen, we want to say a really big thank you tonight for joining us and sharing all about Loose Ends Project and your path to starting the nonprofit and all the work that you've done, how much it's grown over the past 18 months. That's truly incredible. And then I really appreciate you sharing with our members how they can get involved and help. Since we know we have a lot of crafters in our Artifacts community. And we also probably have some folks too that we have working with in the end of life spaces, working with folks who are downsizing. You may come across these unfinished textile projects. And again, rather than simply tossing the bag in a landfill, there is a phenomenal resource out there. It's Jen and her team of finishers who can help you and your family reclaim those textile projects and get a piece of that family history and story back in your hands, fully completed. Ellen, do you have any other questions before we end out tonight? No, great. Well, Jen, a very big thank you for joining us. Thank you all for joining us tonight's Evenings with Artifacts. The recording will be available tomorrow on our YouTube channel, along with all the links to Loose Ends Project and the resources Jen mentioned about how to get involved. And then next week, we hope to see you all back on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, for our next episode of Evenings with Artifacts, where we will have Margit Novak, the founder of NASM, the original founder of NASM, and Dr. Daryl Appleton to dive into the science and the heart of helping parents downsize. So it should be a really fun conversation next week. Very useful if you're especially part of that sandwich generation where you've got aging parents and they're going to have to at some point downsize. How do we approach that? So again, thank you, Jen. There's a ton of thank yous popping in the chat. We've already got a couple of folks signed up to be a finisher, so that's wonderful. Thank you all. Yay, that's awesome news. And good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.